Hi everybody, so I am a human resources manager and today we're going to be talking about unionizing a company and what we need to do. Okay, so first things first, we need to figure out if a union is actually necessary, because if our employees are getting paid very well, if they're getting substantial pay, and if they have a safe working environment and job security that's really good, a union might not be necessary. And I understand that some managers are afraid to unionize a company because they're afraid of the bargains and contracts affecting the organization in a bad way. And I can understand that because it can affect the cost of labor. And unionizing is not a bad thing. It's not as bad as people make it out to be. Because I understand people are nervous about it, but it's really not a bad thing. It's a place where employees can go to address concerns, to address issues, and to allow themselves to be heard. So I can understand why people would be nervous, but there's no need to be. Because as long as employees are getting what they need while they're at work, there shouldn't be a reason to have a union. Now, if employees aren't getting what they need, if their problems aren't being solved, if they're not getting good benefits, if they're not getting paid enough, well then I can totally understand why a union would be necessary. But before we start a union, what we can do is we can allow our employees to have control over their work environment. We can allow them to have more control over their work procedures and their schedules. So that's something we can do. It's also very important to emphasize respect and communication. Respect and communication are very important regardless, whether you're at work, whether you're outside of work, they're very important. So it's very important that we communicate very effectively with our employees, we listen to their concerns, and we try to figure out what we can do to solve their problems. So we can listen to them because we don't always have to agree with the situation. We don't have to agree with our employees, but it's important to listen to them and to see what we can do to fix their concerns. Because if we just listen to a problem and we just diffuse the situation by agreeing, all we're really doing is listening but not taking any action, and we want to make sure we don't do that. So, if it's necessary to unionize, if our employees, if they feel that they're not getting what they need and their problems aren't being solved and unionizing is necessary, there are certain things that we need to do beforehand. So it's very important that we get legal counsel. We want to make sure we do this before we start the union and right before we're about to take action. Because if we don't get legal counsel, if we don't ask around, we can get in a lot of trouble because we might have a problem, and that won't be good because there are certain things that we do. If we break any labor regulations, that will be a violation of the National Labor Relations Act, and we want to make sure we avoid that. So it's very important to get legal help. And certain things that would be considered violations would be threatening to shut down a union, asking employees if they're for or against unions, consultants putting a stop to managers contacting employees. Those are things that are very serious and things we want to make sure we avoid. Another thing we can do is allow two-way communication, encourage teamwork, encourage two-way communication. Teamwork is very important on the job, no matter what job you have. It's very important. It's also important to make sure that the managers we have and the employees we have are people-oriented, because this can avoid a lot of problems, because it's very important to be people-oriented, to have people skills. And as far as communication is concerned, it's important that we communicate effectively with our employees and we have a meeting. We can have a meeting where we meet with our employees and managers together, and we can also have a meeting where we just meet as managers. We just meet in small groups of managers and we talk and we address concerns at these meetings, and we can have these meetings regularly. It can't hurt to have these meetings to talk about certain things, because if we talk about certain issues before they enter the union, before they need to enter a union, that's even better. We want to make sure we do that. So another thing we can do is get consultants, but it's very important to be careful with who we are hiring as consultants, because like I said before, there are consultants who put a stop to employees and managers having contact, and we certainly do not want that. So it's very important that we screen our consultants ahead of time. So we can ask around, we can ask people in our network if they would recommend anybody. We could ask managers in other companies who they used and if they would recommend them. We can also ask for references. So once we find a consultant we want to use, we can ask for references. We can call them and we can ask them if they would recommend us using that person as a consultant. So those are things we can do to make sure that we are getting a good consultant. So when we make decisions, before we make a final decision, and this goes for a union or not, whichever, it's very important to communicate with all of the staff before making a final decision, because if one person just makes a decision and runs with it, that can cause a lot of problems. And we certainly do not want that, because that can cause conflict and not everybody's on the same page. So we want to make sure that before we make decisions, everybody is all on the same page, everybody's communicated before we make a final decision. So that does it for this presentation for today, and I just wanted to say that the reference that I used to find this information is called the Edward Lowe Foundation, and the website is edwardlowe.org. And I just wanted to thank everybody for listening, and I hope you all have a very good rest of your day.